Right, and here we are. Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Healing Conversations. My name is Einav Avni, and today with me, Phoebe Leona. Hi, Phoebe.
Hi, Nav. How are you? I'm so happy to be here with you.
Thank you. Really happy to have you here and
Yeah,
really excited about this conversation. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where are you? What are you? All of that.
all of the things. Yes. So who am I? In terms of labels that I go by, I'm a speaker, I'm a dancer, I'm a teacher, I'm a writer, I'm an author, a newly published author. And the thread of all of those is that I love to turn the light on for people to understand what's happening within themselves on a deeper, more micro level, and then also the more expansive level, the macro level. So I do a lot of playing between those in those different levels. And where am I? Well, I'm currently in New York, in Cold Spring, New York. It's a home, very much a home to me. But right now, I'm here as a traveler and friend, taking care of some kitty cats. And what was the other question you said? Who am I? Where
Uh,
am I? And
what, yeah, it was who, where, what, all of that.
all of the things. Yes, I'm sure we're going to dive in deeper to the others.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So maybe we can start already with this thing that you said. How are you working with people to help them shine that light on who they are in within themselves, and then how it all translates into the bigger picture.
Yeah. Well, I would love to just talk a little bit of my story and how I got there, of
Yes.
how I help serve the world. So I was a professional dancer in New York City for many years. And while I was dancing, I found Pilates, I found yoga as a way of my own physical therapy. But then when I was diving more and more deeply into yoga, I was seeing how there were so many other doors, not just the physical door, but the spiritual door, the emotional door, the subtle body, the energy door. So I loved it, and I dove in and I started to teach yoga. And so I've been teaching yoga for almost 20 years now. And what I was realizing when I was teaching, and I was teaching Pilates prior to that too, was when I was teaching, I wasn't just giving the alignment. I wasn't just giving, put your knee over your ankle. I was giving those to keep the physical body safe. But I was also just intuitively guiding people through movement in, okay, how you're doing this is how you do everything else off of your mat too. And that came from my teachers. It came from just my own intuitive hits when I was realizing how everything that we're doing on the yoga mat really is a reflection of what you're doing outside. And you can use that on like this microscopic level for, an hour or so when you're in your body. So that really excited me. And then I started to shift a little bit out of teaching asana, and I was diving more deeply into trauma because I dealt with a lot of childhood trauma. So it was my way of healing my own experiences of childhood. But then I was seeing how this movement and connection to body was really healing for myself and for others. And I dove into somatic therapy. So somatic therapy, for anybody who's out there who doesn't know it, somatic is simply just of the body. So understanding what is happening physically in the body and how it's affecting the nervous system and how it affects everything else. So we kind of talk a lot about mindset these days, of shifting your mindset. And we can think of somatic therapy as a way of shifting this physical experience and energetic experience, to kind of take us to that next level, like mindset does, right? So that's the work that I've been doing more so in the past handful of years, is shifting from the language of yoga into this language of just simply more of a blanket of how can we really understand what is just happening within ourselves and how everything else out here is a reflection, and vice versa. So everything is an invitation into self, um, big S self. And the beautiful thing is, while I was going into that, I found my way back to dance. So I had retired when I started to teach yoga full time. And I was realizing that my heart was a little bit broken from dancing in performance settings. there was something that was missing. And so and yoga really filled that up for me in a lot of ways. And this idea, this exploration that I'm talking about really filled me up in a lot of ways. But then I became a little bit burnout in teaching yoga. And I started to move a lot more organically. Like I was lying on the floor. I was just deeply breathing. What you might look at if you're a yoga practitioner, it would look more so of what you would do at the beginning of the class. It was a lot of rolling around on the floor. It was very organic movement. And I realized, oh, there's something here, not just for me, just rolling around on the floor, but there is some sort of structure and form here that I think could benefit other people. And so I worked with a healer who was my mentor at the time. And I brought it to her and I said, is this something, I feel really called to share this to the world. And she said, yes, let's, codify this a little bit more. So she worked with me. And so that was the birthing of my own movement practice, Movement 109, where I invite people to ground down. So a lot of the first half of the experience is lying on the floor. And when we lie on the floor, just generally, we calm the nervous system. So if a lot of us in life are in this fight or flight, especially the last handful of years. So when we're in this fight or flight, our body it can't relax. It can't do all of the things that it needs to do, like proper digestion, like proper reproduction. And so when we come to just simply lying on the floor, doing very more passive, receptive movement, we start to calm the nervous system. When we connect deeper to our breath, we slow the breath down. Our heartbeat also slows down. So we move into that fight or flight. That's the sympathetic nervous system. We move into the parasympathetic, the rest and digest system. So then we can allow the physical body to go back to what it needs to do, but then also just we get to see a whole new perspective. We're not looking at everything as a threat in our life, right? We can really see through another lens. So that was Movement 109 was born, I think, like 4 or 5 years ago now. And that's a lot of what I work with in terms of working with clients is I take them in this movement journey, but then it's also evolved into, okay, what is showing up in your life right now? And I work privately with people where it's, okay, what is showing up in your life right now? How is your body feeling when you think about that or talk about that, or when you're in that moment, if you can recollect that? And then what kind of movements or breath exercises or meditations or journaling can we use to come back to that rest and digest, and then see that experience through a new lens, see it from a more expansive lens rather than just, what's right in front of us that is a threat, that we might see as a threat, or we want to fight it. Yeah. So that's a little bit about what I'm doing now.
So that really, we talk a lot about, as you said, where do you feel it? How do you feel it? What is the feeling? And a lot of the time, it's really, we might be able to notice where in the body we feel the emotion, the sensation, but actually, there is also some sort of like an anchoring in I always feel my stress in this body part, or I'm always feeling my excitement in this body part. So we're able to kind of connect with not just the sensation, but also what it means to us about the sensation. And so it's interesting for me to hear what you're saying, because it's like, what is it that you're feeling, and now don't get so attached to it, right? It's kind of walking with that to move it around the body, to move it to change it, to lean into it, rather than kind of noticing it and then feeling uncomfortable with it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it is. It's my little mantra is awareness is the transformation. That awareness, we don't have to have expectation for it. We don't have to judge it. We don't have to label it. We don't have to change it in any way. Like you said, we can just turn the light on to what that sensation is, to whatever that situation is. And I love the name of your coaching, Untangled Coaching, right? That's where the untanglement starts, right? Just noticing that there's this knot within me, and then the work will, there's action steps too, but just that awareness of that the knot is there to begin with, right?
Yeah.
Is something really powerful, very powerful.
Because I think a lot of the time we may be feeling the knot, as you say, and then try and fight it, try and push it down, push it away, push it to other places. But as you're saying, there is a lot of strength and empowerment in actually figuring out what it actually means and what is it embodying, what is it bringing with it, this sensation that we are feeling.
Yes, absolutely. And when you're speaking, I was also thinking of, when we have this knot, I love that we're using that analogy. We'll stay with it. Like when you have this knot, and it could be a physical sensation in the body, it could be some sort of bigger obstacle in your life. But we might also notice that, oh, this knot shows up in other aspects of my life too. And so we can start to just, maybe we're not ready for that bigger thing in our life, but we
Mm.
can look at that smaller version of it within ourselves. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe that knot is something, a tension between you and somebody that you love, or just a challenging relationship. But you're not quite ready to communicate with that person yet, or you're not quite sure why the knot's there. But then if that knot is showing up somewhere else within you, that might be a safer place to say, okay, how is my body responding to this? How can I shift that perspective and start to change my role? And that might give some light onto how to enter into that relationship, or maybe even just doing that untangling of within yourself will be the elixir for that bigger knot in that relationship.
Mm. So what I understand is that in the way that you work with people, there is a lot of paying attention to sensations in the body, in the breathing, and all of that. But also, of course, there's words, right, to describe and to
Yeah.
bring in memories or associations and things like that.
Yeah. There are a couple different formats, I would say, of having an experience.
Mm.
So what we're talking about is, yes, I would have this more of a one-on-one experience where I would let the person, basically come, and there's a questionnaire that they answer questions for them to dig in deep first, and then we have these conversations, and then there's exercises that I sort of prescribe to them. But then
Mm.
there's also more of a group experience, which this is where Movement 109 started, was to enter into more of a ceremony where we came in together as a group, and there might be an intention as a group, but you also might have your own, like, what is my knot? Let's just go with that theme. Like maybe that bigger question for all of us is also an individual question within, or maybe there's another intention that the person will come into. And then we enter in this movement ceremony where I guide them through the groundwork, and we'll just notice what's happening in the body, and then maybe that intention will come in too, and see, okay, this is how my body's responding when I think about that or feel into it. And okay, maybe I can see how I'm avoiding it, or pushing through it and trying to micromanage it. So how can I just be in my body and see that I can just simply breathe with it and flow with it, right?
Mm.
And then we have a whole other part of the ceremony where we dance. There's a lot of free movement where we dance. And that's where, when we might notice in the groundwork that there's a pattern that we were holding on to. Now, when we that has been my therapy my whole life. It's it's when that body. So what happens when we are in that fight or flight are the chemicals, the stress chemicals like cortisol. Um, they go through our adrenaline, they go through our system, and if we don't give it an outlet, it gets stuck in our tissues, right? The issues are in our tissues. So something like dance or anything, I mean, that's just my language that I speak, but anybody could go for a run or whatever, then it allows the chemicals to be released from the tissues. So that's where that moment is of, okay, I've noticed this pattern that I've been holding, and so the dance is an invitation into releasing it, to giving it an expression. Maybe there was an anger deep inside of you, didn't even know that was inside of you. So the dance, you could be like, like have that aggression where you can release it in a safe place. Or maybe it's grief, and you start to cry and you release the tears that you've held on to for years. And so we go through this whole ceremony together, and then there's a grounding to integrate again. So those are a couple of the formats that I do when I'm introducing this movement practice.
So it's fascinating. And so the work that you do and individuals and the group one, is it a one-off, or is it like a series of sessions? I mean,
Yeah.
or maybe there's, a topic, or what
Yeah.
we said about there's something in each session that comes up.
I like variety. I like to give people options. I think that I'm very much like, don't put things inside a box, and everybody's going to learn at a different pace. So some people might need that intimate study where they work one on one, and that might be just a one off, but it also could be a whole experience together, like a six week journey together. The movement practice, we do have special events around the year, but
Mm.
like going on a retreat, I have a retreat in Costa Rica coming up. So those are more like special containers. But then there are movement journeys where I hold a container for a group for periods of time too. So there are lots of ways to experience it. And I would love to
Yes.
have share the experience with you at some point soon too.
And it's interesting, though. I think, from my experience with my clients and stuff, there's definitely people of words, and there's definitely people of sensations and movements,
Yes,
and all of that. And sometimes they, of course, are the same. They have both in one person, but sometimes they're very kind of clearly defined in a sense.
so true.
Uh, yeah. So how do you navigate that?
Yeah. It is. It's so true. And when we work one on one, especially, you really get to see that. And I think it's really important that we meet them where they're at. And I know you do too. Like you see, okay, it sounds like what you do and I do as well is okay, this person isn't ready to speak about this. So, how can we give it an expression that maybe they don't even know? So, then that's when I would check in and see, okay, well, what do you do? One of the questions I ask is, what do you do when you're stressed? Like, what's a healthy resource that you have when you're stressed? Is it running? Is it, you know, is it writing in your journal? So I kind of just meet them where they're at and see, oh, they need to write words down. They have to give it an expression and see the words and see it for themselves, or they need to go and have a physical experience. So I see how they are already naturally doing it intuitively, and then we'll go down that road in a more expansive way. How about you? How do you meet them where they're at?
Well, a lot of the time, well, I don't do any movements in my in
Yeah.
my sessions and all of that. I try and figure out. Well, usually when I work with people, if there's something, for example, around stress, or something that is really where I can feel that they're very much stuck, and they might be stuck with an idea that they have. So it's not necessarily, um, you know, something that correlates to something that they've experienced, but maybe more often it's something that they're scared about. Something is about to come.
Mhm.
And one method for me to work with people is to say, okay, let's look at another time where you did have all of the, where you were able to display the behavior that you want. So, for example, if they have a meeting or something that they're feeling very nervous around, and they don't see how they're going to come out of it, on a winning, on a win, then I can say, okay, but let's find another place where you already displayed the confidence and
Yeah.
the feeling, being relaxed, being, um, in control of everything. And
Yeah.
let's see what was happening there that we can bring into here.
Yeah.
And so it's just
Beautiful.
really about helping them to see that they've created an attachment to a fear that is not
Hmm.
hasn't happened yet, but this attachment has created something that they can't release, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just saw that someone left a comment, but a Facebook user
Okay.
saying that, yes, meeting the people where they're at is incredibly important. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
important. So
Yeah.
important. Yeah. I think that's what I have found um, for most of the people I work with is, and just people in general, is they want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be felt. And
Mhm.
when you meet people where they're at, that's just simply what you're doing. You're seeing them with no expectation. you're hearing them with no expectation, and you're feeling them on a deep level with no expectation of trying to change them. Right? We're just simply holding that space, because when they come into these sacred spaces with us as coaches or guides, um, they're unfolding a lot that maybe they haven't even allowed themselves to feel before, or even knew that they had within them, right? And so
Yeah.
we don't necessarily need to do anything for a period of time. It might just be seeing them and feeling them and hearing them, because they haven't even witnessed it within themselves. And so to give them that space first for themselves, but then us to, be a witness for them is really powerful.
And something that I notice with my clients, that sometimes when they speak about things, it's pretty much the first time that they actually heard themselves say something.
Exactly.
And when we hear ourselves speak, that's when we're able to process things in a different way, right? Because we
Mhm.
engage another more senses than just internal thinking. So giving people the space to speak out loud,
Yeah.
to think and to feel out loud is so empowering, but also so important. And then the next thing that I can give people is the no judgment, because
Mhm.
sometimes people will say something and then you can see that they finally they've heard what they've just said, and they have this reaction to, oh my God, it's out there, I just said it, and I'm now worried about what my audience will think about it. And
Yeah.
so it's so important for me to create this environment where it's of course it's trust, but it's definitely also there's no judging, because
Yeah.
wherever you are at with whatever it is that you're going through, I am in no position to judge that, because
Mhm.
we there's really judging is not even, it can't even come on the, it's not a question even. um,
Yeah.
and when people feel the safety of the environment, then they can start exploring that. So it's very dynamic, of course,
Mhm.
every conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that what you were just saying, being able to just give them permission, to say what they said, and with you, like you said, you're not responding to them, and they're actually, you're witnessing them respond to it. Like you said, like, oh,
Yeah,
and they're looking at it like, oh my gosh, I just said that, and they might be judging themselves and waiting for you to judge, like reinforce that judgment that is
yeah.
already in their head. And for us to give them that permission is who that is, to just witness them and then to give them that permission to not react, is, I think that's really like the next level of the transformation.
And I think because a lot of the time, they've been thinking about it, right? It's been going
Hmm.
around in their heads, even if it was a little bit on their unconscious level.
Yep.
And then now that it's out there, it's that fear of really, what do I do with it for themselves?
Yeah.
Like, and actually being able to speak it out loud obviously means that they can kind of break it down a little bit, and it's not as
Mhm.
scary as it was when it was within them. But I'm guessing, because I was thinking to myself the other day about dancing, for example.
Mm.
I was telling my daughters that there was a song, and I said, "Oh, we used to dance to it all the time," and they were like, "You used to dance?" And I was like, "Damn, it really has been a long time since we haven't danced in the living room for a long time." And
Ah, you need to.
yeah, right, yeah, but it just, there's so much that is kind of, well, I don't know, in the way, in a sense of, we're not there at the moment. But it did. I
Mm.
really did think about it, that I used to dance a lot, and I
Mm.
hear about these kind of places, which of course is similar, I guess, into what you're describing about people getting together for a specific dance session. That it's not like
Mhm.
clubbing or anything. It's more releasing.
Mhm.
And yes, it was just interesting for me to think about. Actually, dancing used to be something that I used to do all the time, and now it
I'm
isn't.
I mean, I'm witnessing you right now, and your face just like is so bright right now when you talked about that. And that's the thing is, we start to deny ourselves these joys, like
Yeah.
dancing or whatever it might have been, in a childhood, places like going and playing house or whatever it was that you did when you were little. And at some point we were told, okay, we can't do that now. And you're even thinking back and you're not quite sure why you don't do it anymore. And that is something that I like to invite people into too, is giving themselves this permission to bring in those little sparks of joy again, and maybe discover some sparks of joy they didn't even know about, right?
Mm.
So, oh, I would love to see you dancing in your living room with your family. That's
But
really
that
sweet.
brings me to another conversation that I was having with someone, I think here on the Healing Conversations some time ago, which was really about how do you make sure that you have, an element of joy in every day
Yeah.
that you live. And it's exactly that. It's so often and so easy for us to move away from joy and just get
So,
caught on the I need to do and I must do and all of
yeah.
the chores.
Yeah. I have the past, I would say, year or so, maybe year and a half, I've adopted this idea of play, because we have I mean, especially like Western world, we have the shoulds, we have the I need tos, we have so many lists of the things that we need to do, that we have forgotten and given ourselves permission to have joy in our lives. And I think that the chaos of life just continues to get amplified. It just gets louder and louder. And then there's no more space to even remember there was joy in my life before. And so this idea of play, what I say is it's an acronym. So P is for pause, just to pause whatever the script is that you and physical things that you're doing.
Mm.
To L, listen, just simply listen to what's in your body. How are you feeling, right? Because we often don't even realize that our shoulders are up into our ears and we're so stressed about all the things we have to do. And oh, now I can listen and go, oh, I don't need to do that right now. A is to activate how you want to feel. So how do you want to feel at the end of your session, right? With me or on your own. So am I always stressed? Do I want to feel more relaxed? If I'm always tired, do I want to feel more energized? So whatever that undesired state that you're in when you were listening, is there another desired state you want to feel at the end of it? And then why is to just give it a full body yes. And that's to give yourself full permission to do the things, or maybe not do the things that bring you joy, right? So not do the things is, I just need to take a nap. Then give yourself permission to take a nap, because you never allow yourself to get a nap. Or maybe it is to turn the music on and really loud and dance around and sing and play. So
Mm.
to give yourself that full body yes permission, so that you can have just that pocket of time and space for joy. And then what we find is that we become a little addicted to that. Like, oh, I want my play. What I was finding when I was doing this for myself is, okay, I'll start with 30 minutes. And then I was like, no, I could handle an hour. And now I'm at a point in my life where I don't want to book anything until like 11 a.m. because I want to have a whole morning where I just have so much freedom to do all the things that I love. I made an exception to be here today with you
Thank
because this is very joyful. But yeah, I usually try not to do like work, quote unquote, until a couple of hours, because now I've realized I'm actually so much more. It bleeds into the rest of my day. I'm more relaxed, I'm more calm, I'm more centered, and I'm also just enjoying, like that thread of gratitude and joy is threaded out through even the things that I should be doing and have to be doing and need to do.
That's I really like that actually because first of all I really like this play acronyms.
Mm-hmm.
It's pause is definitely I really believe in pause in all sorts of different things, right? Like especially maybe when you realize that you're escalating or spiraling,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and to have the ability to say, well, hang on, I'm definitely bringing. I mean, if I'm able to recognize that I'm bringing something here, which is not necessarily from the here and the now, but rather from
Mm-hmm.
my perceptions, my stories, my beliefs, my attachments, all of that. So if I'm able to pause and say, let's cut that cord. It doesn't have to be in this way. I can come into the situation with other forces, maybe some things that are more, as you say, intentional, and how do I want it to be. I
Yeah.
really believe in pauses. But I like everything that you said, listening to how you're feeling, and I like that. I hope that people take that into account, and start using it as well.
Yeah.
But also, I think what you're saying about, giving yourself this permission of doing the things that work for you, and
Mhm.
y- you know it's it's kind of its next level, right? It's like, we I think this what comes to my mind is that it's the difference between, being in effort and being in flow. Because
Mhm.
when we are in effort, then we are constantly trying to do things, and there's no rest, there's nothing. When we are in effort, we can't say, okay, I'll just take 2 hours to dance, or to just breathe, or just be, because in my mindset I need to do something, and so we try
Mhm.
very hard and then not get very much. But when we are
Yeah.
in flow, actually it's exactly the opposite. You
So
do
true.
get so much more when you allow.
Yes, absolutely. When you're speaking about that, I'm thinking, this idea of masculine energy and the feminine energy, and like finding the flow is more of that receptive feminine energy. And what
Hmm.
we've mostly been raised in this Western world of sorts is that masculine energy of the hustle. Like I used to always talk about hustling for my work and working all the time. And I think the pandemic was an invitation for all of us to collectively pause and renegotiate that contract.
Mm.
This wasn't working. And now some of us have gone back into that old way, and it's amplified. But I think a lot of us, there's this awakening right now that are people like us having these conversations, holding spaces for people who are questioning it and saying that old world was no longer working for me. I need to find a new way to find this flow, this more receptive, passive energy to trust, right? Because that old world, there wasn't a lot of trust at that point. We were always going into that fight or flight mode, fighting for my job, fighting for whatever it was, getting to the next level of sorts. And there
Yeah.
was not a trust there. So we're in this beautiful in between spot where we might feel, and for myself included, I feel like, oh, I need to go back into that, for whatever reason. Like, oh, I need to pay my rent. So I need to start to hustle a little bit more again. I have the old programming, and then I say, okay, no, just go back into your play, breathe, but finding the balance. So I also want to emphasize that too for people who are listening to me and like, oh, I just quit my job and I'll find the flow. And no, there's that beautiful balance of the two. There is structure and form, but then there's also this surrender, and that's that in between spot that I think that the magic really happens.
I Yeah, definitely. There's definitely balance is a big word, of course. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, mentioning the pandemic, I think the people who allow themselves to pause and to reflect, they're the people that actually saw a lot of good things that happened in the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic. To be able to recognize that actually I'm in this job, relationship, whatever, and it's not working for me. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, if I don't do something now, when will I do it?
Yes.
And so a lot of the time, or a lot of people, but of course not all of them, um, they started making some different decisions, which was, I think, really beautiful to see.
Yeah.
But of course, on the other hand, the pandemic also, brought a lot of stress to people, a lot of, unknown
Absolutely.
and uncertainties. Um,
Yeah.
but I just want to, put that to one side. And I want to ask. So you told us about, you mentioned that you wrote a book. So maybe tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
Oh, well, thank you for asking. Yes, I just had my book published, Dear Radiant One, and it is this story. It's basically my story. So it's my memoir. The first part of the book is to give you a little bit of my own childhood trauma, complicated relationship with my father, so there's context. And then the last like 2/3 of the book is I continue the storytelling, but it's not linear. It's writing letters to the emotions. So I write letters to what I'll call the shadow emotions, like anger, like fear, like chaos and anxiety. And I write these letters, so you're witnessing me having this relationship with these emotions through
Mm.
my storytelling and kind of untangling those knots that I have with fear and anger and anxiety and so on. And then it transitioned each section into the turning the lens or turning the perspective to the reader. So now you just witnessed me. How is this showing up for you? How is fear showing up in your life? So there's some inquiry there. And then I offer some of the somatic practices that I offer to my clients. So if you're feeling fear, for instance, so much so that you can't feel your body, right? Some people, if they have a lot of trauma where their body wasn't safe, when they're triggered, they might not feel sensations in their body. So just simply squeezing, their limbs, right? Maybe it's that their heart beats really fast. So just taking really simple breathing exercises to come back to breath. So those are some of the somatic awareness practices that I offer in each section to make friends with the shadow emotions, because what we would love to say is, I don't have fear anymore, right? I don't have anger anymore, but that's not true. We actually need them. And
Yeah.
anger, right? Like we need that fire. So I also talk through, since I have the background of yoga, I bring in the subtle body being the chakra system, the energy body. So I correlate the chakras with each emotion. So, anger has this element of fire, and where it usually sits is, in the torso of sorts, like the solar plexus. So like when you have that fire, right, that's what takes you into taking action in your life, right? Those things that you're mad about, instead of, punching a fist into a wall, well, how can I use that fire to make that change, be the agent of change, right? So it doesn't happen to me again, but maybe it happens I don't want that to happen to other people, right? So then you can become some sort of advocate or activist in that sense. That's just an example. And then the last part of the book is the letters to the lighter emotions, like joy and gratitude and love, and again through my own storytelling, but then turning it to the reader and saying, do you have this love? Do you feel gratitude? Are these the emotions that you're not allowing yourself? How can we invoke more of these? And again, offer somatic and expanded awareness practices. And so there might be some journaling there too, as well as the physical experience and energies experience.
Sounds amazing. I really like the
Yeah.
sound of this book,
Yeah.
and also the invitation to explore. The sensation in the body, but also the emotions, and it is interesting for me because a lot of the time, and I have that in my own practice, of course. When we use words like fear and trauma,
Mhm.
and other words like that, and these are words that these are triggering words in a sense, right? Because
Yeah.
nowadays, if I because I also do the energy healing, the body code, and so
Mm.
I'm talking about unprocessed emotions and trauma and stuff, and I noticed that when I use the word trauma, people they have no idea anymore what to do with this word, and it feels, oh,
Mhm.
sometimes people say, oh, I haven't, I haven't experienced any trauma, or
Yeah.
they really don't know what to do with it. And the same thing with fear. People immediately say, I don't have any fear. I'm not living in fear. And
Yeah.
then when you start, unearthing, untangling, you can really see that actually a lot of the time fear is the driving force of so much of what we do.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to, I think, as you're describing your book, that actually you're using the words, but then you also have the examples that help people to
Yeah.
see that actually we all pretty much experience and feel the same kind
Yeah.
of thing.
I mean, trauma is somewhat a relatively new word for us. So the story I share is my father was a Vietnam vet. So he did 2 tours of Vietnam. He came
Mm,
back broken, severely broken.
Mm.
And he had what we now know as PTSD. But when he came back, they didn't even have that word. They didn't have this word of, oh, you had trauma. They called it shell shock. So he went to the VA. They gave him some meds. They said, you'll be fine. But he wasn't fine. So he actually self-medicated himself through harder drugs, illegal drugs. So when we started to hear this word around probably the 90s, because when he was going through his stuff, it was mostly the 80s and early 90s. But then we started to hear about specifically of Vietnam vets, dealing with this idea of PTSD or trauma. And so what I experienced was that whenever somebody said trauma, they assumed it was somebody who was in war. But the past 20 years, maybe even really more like 10 years or even smaller, like it's become a very common word. But I have found that, I'm in my mid 40s and I work with people around my age group and maybe a little bit younger, maybe a little bit older too. But I've noticed that, my mother's age and older, they don't even have that on their radar, like you were saying. And I just had a recent experience with my mother where I was trying to explain to her what trauma was, because she was saying that I got in my head. She loves me. We have a very good relationship, but she was saying, you're just in your head. And I was like, no, this is a physical experience this is my nervous system responding to something that's taking me back. Like, yes, I know logically I'm here right now in this space. My mind is here, but my body is having an experience from prior. And so I think that the more that we can have these really open, honest communications, it'll have a better understanding of what trauma is and how it manifests, but also give the other person permission to experience, oh, I might have gone through something like that. I think the heart of my work is turning that light on, not only for yourself, but I love the saying, I think it's like more of a first generation American, saying is, when you heal yourself, you're healing 7 generations before and behind. So, I'm getting to do that immediate work with my mother and my grandmother who are still alive, but now I'm understanding, right, the quantum leap that I'm doing with that is I'm healing all of our stories that have been passed through the generations. And I will not continue that by, passing it on to the generations after. So having these uncomfortable conversations with people who don't understand what trauma is, and making it show them that what it really is, not just this dark, scary thing that just people who had to go to war or whatever that story is around them. It'll give them permission to see and feel it for themselves too, and release it, because they've been holding it in some way and not allowing themselves to feel it.
And that's so important. It's exactly that. I think it's regardless of the word that you use to describe the thing, the emotion, the feeling, the fear, it is there. And if we're not talking about it, if we're not expressing it in some way, then it's holding us back. It's causing so much pain in our lives. But when we allow it to come out, to if we be it by dancing, by running, by singing, by whatever it is, this is how we move forward. We're really opening it up and forgiving ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I just got chills when you said forgiving ourselves. My whole body has chills when you said that. Yeah, it is. It's a forgiving and a remembering of ourselves, like that essence of that big S self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And tell us, so we're coming to the end of the conversation. What message or idea would you like to leave our listeners with before we finish?
I think that's sort of where we're just landing right now, and I'll continue that thread is, when what I often see is that people aren't giving themselves permission, and you might have had this conversation with potential clients. Well, I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have the blah, blah, blah. I need to do this first. I need to take care of my kids. But when we really heal ourselves, when we give ourselves permission to know who we are, what are the things that make us tick? What are the traumas, if there is some trauma there? embracing all of that, we aren't just selfish. We're not being selfish. It's actually quite selfless, because when we're giving ourselves that opportunity to heal and grow and expand, it will be that ripple effect. It will affect your relationship with your children, with your parents, with your coworkers, because that work is being done within you. And that awareness is that transformation, not only in how you're making that relationship within you, but also all of your relationships, right? You can have more conscious relationships. And that, you don't know who you're affecting when you do that, right? It could be like us sitting here on this podcast, because you and I have done some sort of inner work and we're having this really beautiful conversation that might be turning a light on for somebody who's watching us on Facebook. And they're going to sit there and think about that and go, oh, how is that shifting? Like, how is that occurring within me right now? And so they might take just a little grain of our conversation and apply that to their life on a bigger, and then it might be a huge wave that the two of us won't even know about. Yeah. So when we sit here and we're being asked, by people like us, like, are you ready to go on this journey of untangling those knots within you? It's not selfish at all. It's completely selfless. Or big S. Big S self, and then you're being of service to the world when you discover that essence of big S self.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like this a lot. Give yourself permission to be, to have, to experience joy, to look after yourself, to discover, to dance.
To dance. I want to see a video of you. Will you please send me a video of you dancing with your family in the living room?
Yes,
I invite you to do that.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. Right. Phoebe, thank you so much for really enriching and beautiful conversation. Thank you for being here and for sharing with us everything that you are, that you do, that you inspire people to be. I will, after this conversation, I will put your social links in the chat so that people can get in touch with you and find out more about what you do, about your book, about your retreats and everything. And let's take the conversation to wherever it needs to go. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to acknowledge you too for holding this space for other voices that are, doing this work. So I really appreciate your support and sharing my voice with your community. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.